why 3% mortgage are hurting America. And I know there's a lot of people that are excited about the 3% mortgage, but you know something? I'm going to share with you today why that's hurting America and exactly who is being hurt, because there's a lot of folks with these 3% mortgages, 4% mortgages. And why would I think that it's hurting America? Well, because I'm looking at statistics. And yes, I am a stat guy. I watch the stats all the time. And our household debt is growing. That's not a good sign. We're not looking for a household debt to grow. We want people to have a job, live within their means, but we're watching household debts growing. So why do I say that that's the problem? Why is that the root cause of all of these issues? Well, the problem is that people are thinking that that's the end of the story. That just because they've got that household or they've got that 3% mortgage, 4% mortgage, 5% mortgage, they're thinking that that's all that matters in the world. And I want you to know that that's not the main thing. That's not all that matters. The amount of equity you have and what does your household budget look like? Much, much more important than any of these other numbers. And I'm seeing so many people that are looking at their household debt and thinking, well, you know something, if that's the only thing that matters. And I'm going to share with you that mortgage rates are going to come down. We know that there's a lot of folks out there that have a mortgage that is under 4%. 23.6% of the population has a mortgage that is under 3%. Yet we are seeing credit card debt at an all-time high. How could that possibly be? How do those go together? Well, I'm going to explain that to you today. I'm going to show you some stats, and I'm going to show you how this can really be problematic. Nobody wants to talk about the problematic side of this, but I will. Because what you need to know is if you're spending 7% on your household debts and you've got a 3% mortgage, does it matter that you have a 3% mortgage? No, I'm going to say that it doesn't really matter. What matters is you got to look at the big picture. It's like saying I've got to pay my mortgage out of my bank account at Bank of America, and all my other debts come out of my bank account at Wells Fargo. Now, the issue is they're still your bank accounts. And if they're overdrawn, it doesn't matter which account they're coming out of because they're still yours. So I want you to understand these things because that's where the big issue is going to come from. And I'm going to show you that, yeah, while you might take some of your debts and convert what might be called good debt into bad debt, well, it may be beneficial to you to make that change, but nobody's telling you about that. If nobody tells you about that, how do you know what you're doing? Because you're saying, you know, and the number one question I get all the time about mortgages is, what's your interest rate? Well, it's between 4 and 7%. Well, that's a big swing, Ron. Nobody else says anything like that. Well, nobody else wants to tell you the truth because everybody can offer you a rate that's between 4 and 7%, and every one of those rates could be the very best rate for you. The fact of the matter is, if you don't know why that's the best rate for you or how to make that a good rate for you, then you're going to have a problem. If you know how that works, then you're going to be in good shape. And I'm going to explain to you this morning exactly, or this evening, depending upon when you're listening to this broadcast, how that works, why it is that you can raise your interest rate to a significantly higher number and have more money at the end of the day. Do you think that would make conversation that I was sharing with you in the last segment? 3% mortgage hurting America. So the bottom line here, and I did this analysis for a family just recently. We did an analysis looking at their home, and I'm pretty sure that we were looking at, they had I think it was like a $700,000 home with a $350,000 in mortgage at 3.5% or something along those lines. I'm not going to give you the exact numbers. It doesn't matter. It's the concept that's important. So, and I want to give you the background here also. I'm going to share with you some exact numbers. And I don't know if I sent this chart to Josh just a second ago. And do you have this available, Josh? I know I only gave you about 30 seconds notice. But let's take a look and see. I'm going to see if I can pull it up on my screen as well. So we're going to look at a number for mortgages. Let me see which one you have there. Current rate on an existing mortgage. So 23.6% of those with mortgages are under 3%, 3% or less. 38.5% are between 3.01 and 4. That's 62% of the mortgages are under 4%. And these are folks that are all coming out there and saying, you know something, I don't want to get rid of that mortgage because I'm not going to ever get it again. But it's a fooling yourself situation. And I don't play with fooling yourself situations. We deal with reality on Ron Siegel Radio. The other part of the reality is we know that the vast majority of people have a tremendous amount of equity in their homes. So what did we do? We looked at a chart of equity. We want to see how much equity that you have. And we're going to tell you right now that you've got, let's see, 38.7% of America owns their home with no mortgage. So you're not going to be counted in those numbers I gave you before. We're going to look at mortgages with less than 50% equity is 32.4. And we're looking at people that have over greater than 50% equity is 28.9. So there's a huge amount of equity in America. Last time I looked, the average loan to value was 48. So that means there's 52% equity on average. So if you've got all that equity, why are you carrying a car payment? Why are you carrying a student loan payment? Why might you be carrying credit card debt, in-store debt, any other debt at all? That's the question mark. So let's go back to this scenario that I talked about a little bit ago. We had a $700,000 property that I think it had a $352,000 mortgage, and I think it was 3.5%. Doesn't matter again exactly where it was. But then we looked at it and said they've got about $100,000 in student loans, cars, credit cards, in-store, all the different kinds of debt, unsecured debts. They had about $100,000. So what if you take that $100,000 and the interest rates on that? Now, student loans are probably right around 7% when they start collecting them again. Credit cards, we know, are over 20%. So we just put in 25 because most of the numbers I hear about, if somebody has a lot of student loan or credit card debt, they're not getting the best rates. They're in the 25 to 30% range. So let's look at 25%. And then you look at your cars, maybe you're looking at 3, 4, 5, 8%, depending upon your credit. What happens, and the cars are done over 4, 5, 6 years. Credit cards are done over 300 years if you're making the minimum payment. And student loan debt can be forever. But let's look at this, the game plan here. When we put this particular scenario together, they were looking at like a 6.8% blended household interest rate. That's all that matters is the blended household interest rate. What does that mean? It takes your mortgage, it takes your credit cards, your cars, your student loans, in-store debt, any unsecured debt, puts them all into one lump sum, kind of like where it's getting paid from your checking account. Puts them all into one lump sum and weighting them based on the amount of the debt. So being that your mortgage is probably the biggest one, it has the highest weighting, which only makes sense. So let's continue. They got to 6.8%. But what happened in this scenario is by taking all these debts and putting them together and putting them into, I think we did a 6.5% interest rate. I don't remember exactly, but I'm going to use 6.50 right now because that's what OBMMI said loans locked at yesterday. And again, I'm not doing APR. I'm not paying points paid, points received, because it's just educational purposes only. So if we did a 6.5% interest rate, and again, I don't know if you qualify for that, what's going to end up happening is not your blended household interest rate went down by increasing your mortgage rate. But you say, Ron, I just took my 4, 5, 6 year car payment and put that into a 30-year note. Okay, so what? Well, but I just got this house in 2021 and I've already been making payments on it for, say, 2 years. I've got 28 years left on this, and I had only 4, 5, 6 on the car, and credit cards I'd never get paid off, and the student loans I might never get. Doesn't matter. We're putting them all into one new 30-year loan. Now, when we put all of that into one new 30-year loan, in this scenario, we were saving, I believe the number was $1,103 a month on their total debts, because you had to make your house payment, you had to make each of the car payments, you had to make all the credit card payments, student loan payments. When you added it all together, you're saving $1,100. Now, what do we do with that $1,100? Well, if you were able to keep on with your payments you had, well, just keep on with those payments. Don't make any changes. And send the $1,100 to the principal payment or an additional principal payment every month if you want to. You can send it over to, we talked to Todd Halterman yesterday, send it over to him and have him invest it and get more than probably the 6.5%. But the bottom line is, if you make that extra $1,100 principal payment every month on your mortgage, you're going to cut your mortgage payment down by probably, 12, 13, 14 years. So the biggest debt you have would be paid off significantly sooner, and all your other debts might be a little slower. But here's the other part of it. How about taking half of it and paying down your principal, and take the other half and put it in a new car fund? So when you're ready to buy a new car 3 or 4 or 5 years from now, you have cash to pay for the car. You're not paying interest on any of these things. You have to be disciplined to do this. But 3% mortgages are hurting America. They might even be hurting your family.